Well, hello, all of my beautiful, intelligent, wonderful friends, my Muscle Maven Radio community. Thanks for joining me as always. I'm your host, Ashleigh Van Houten. I have a fantastic guest today whom I know you know and will recognize. She's been a guest before, and we've done a lot of work together. Her name is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She is my doctor. She is a muscle-centric-medicine functional physician. She coined that term based on her focus on muscle as the organ of longevity in our bodies and the importance of muscle, not just for looking good and being strong, but for longevity and disease prevention as well. So she dives deep on things like nutrition and protein requirements, as well as sort of fitness, exercise, lifestyle requirements. We talk about how protein is important, but protein is important for reasons other than what we normally think of, like get your grams in so you can be buff. It's about amino acids, which are the building blocks of our bodies, and how crucial it is to get the right amount and the right types. So we talk about that. We talk about things like the sort of, I guess, gendered issue where it's a lot tougher sometimes for women who are coming from maybe a restrictive or more an approach that's more about like less food and being smaller. Trying to convince them to eat more protein can be tough. So we kind of talk about those specific challenges. We talk about hedonic eating versus eating for nourishment, which I know is something that most of you listening can probably relate to. I can definitely relate to it, especially during COVID. Hedonic eating has been sometimes you feel like it's survival eating because it's like a mental health thing. It's sort of problematic, but you can't help yourself from doing it as well. So I'm sure you guys can understand where I'm coming from with that. We talk about keto and how it may not be the panacea that everyone thinks it is, especially for women. We talk about fasting, all of this good stuff. Now, this was actually something that Gabrielle and I recorded early on in quarantine, which now is probably about 10 years ago. I don't know, whenever this whole mess started, for another workshop that I had done. But I thought it was so good and so full of useful information that I wanted to share it with everybody again. So you might hear us talking about how it's sort of early on in quarantine. Also, one thing that I wanted to mention is Gabrielle and I did do a workshop later in the summer that was focusing on this very topic, this muscle-centric medicine, the fitness aspect, the nutrition aspect, the mindset aspect, just sort of optimizing your life and your health. And it was so fun, and I think it was so well received that we decided to package all of those materials from that 3-week workshop and put it together for sort of self-directed learning for anyone who didn't do the workshop but still wanted the materials, the learning experience. So we've put that all together and put it on some online software where you can essentially purchase it, download it, use it for your own benefit at your own time, read and go through it on your own time. And so it's about 8 hours of video, sort of lecture, workshop sort of information between Gabrielle and myself, as well as a host of other awesome experts and thought leaders that came on and talked with us during the workshop. There's a ton of resources that Gabrielle put together in PowerPoint form going through what muscle-centric medicine is, a deep dive on nutrition and protein requirements, tons of information there. We have a muscle-centric medicine ebook that our good friend and recipe developer Beth Lipton put together just for the workshop. So you can access all of this. We're only putting it up for a limited time because we're kind of just trying to see how interested people are in that self-directed learning kind of platform. So the link will be in the show notes. It'll be in my bio on social media as well as Gabrielle's. We're going to be posting about it all the time. But if you want to get on that and learn from one of the best functional medicine physicians on the planet, time is limited. So get on that, get all that information at a really, really, really cheap price. And that's that. So I hope you enjoy this episode. It is brought to you by our workshop as well as my book, It Takes Guts, available now. By the time this episode comes out, actually, it'll almost be in stores, not quite, still pre-order time. But pre-order is important too. And It means a lot to me if you'd support me and get a copy for yourself, for the hunter in your life, for the adventurous eater, carnivore, paleo person in your world. It would make a great gift. And, coming up to Thanksgiving time, there's actually some recipes in this book. Look, it's not all just scary brain recipes. Okay. I've got some roast heart that would be delicious, stuffed roast heart that would be delicious for Thanksgiving. Lots of desserts, lots of side dishes, lots of fantastic recipes in there that anyone really would enjoy once you kind of get over your fears and give it a shot. It Takes Guts, available now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Chapters, wherever. Check the link in the show notes and get yourself a copy. And that's it. I'll stop rambling. Gabrielle's the best. Here she is talking about protein and food and health and muscles, all the important things in life. Enjoy the episode. And we are live. Woo! It worked. All right. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, thank you for taking time on this holiday Saturday, although does time matter anymore?
Anything for you, of course.
Wait, can we just have a little quick Aries?
Yeah, can we have a little Aries? Maybe she needs a bottle. She's wearing a Blondie t-shirt and, like an old Blondie t-shirt and some fake meow camos.
Her fashion is always way better than mine. And
mine too.
It's fine. I have accepted it. Cutest baby in the world. Okay, maybe she'll come say hi.
Yes, possibly.
But so anyway, I just wanted to thank you so much, honestly, for taking this time. I know you're always super accommodating whenever I ask you to do these things, but I really appreciate it because this is a really unique situation that we're in right now. We've got this group, this self-selected group of about 100, a little bit over 100, I think, women who are all hanging out together in this community to learn and share with each other and try to just figure out some things during this stressful time. So it's a really, really enthusiastic group of women, which I'm very excited about. We've been just going crazy on the Facebook page. And they're very excited to have you because this week we're talking nutrition specifically. That's our focus this week is nutrition. Great. And one of the things that I like to talk about a lot is protein, especially for women who are looking at body composition goals, performance goals, muscle building, overall strength and sort of robust life, right? So, and I think that it is a uniquely difficult conversation sometimes for women, the conversation around protein. So before I ask you any questions, before we take amazing questions from the listeners, can you just kind of give us, for anybody who doesn't know already, just sort of like the elevator pitch about like what you do and what's important to you from a physician standpoint?
Yes. So I'm the physician that the other physician sees. I'm the physician that the special operations, my husband is a Navy SEAL, high performers, CEOs, Mavericks. That's my patient group. And I practice this concept called muscle-centric medicine. And it's the concept that muscle is the organ of longevity. And what that means is that, for example, you have a cardiologist that deals with your heart. You have an endocrinologist that deals with your thyroid, but actually muscle is the most important metabolic organ. And, I could tell you a little bit more about the practice. It's steeped in nutrition. I did 7 years, 2 residencies and a fellowship. But the bottom line is what I can offer you guys is a way to clear the confusion, give you some nutrition truths, and move you from a state of confusion to a state of clarity. And why that's so important is for execution. Mm-hmm. And that's really where I can serve you guys in terms of clearing things up. And by the way, just saying, one of the things that I specialize in my practice is weight management, optimizing body composition.
Okay. And I think that's a pretty strong goal for a lot of the women in the group, whether it's just losing fat, whether it's building muscle, which of course is my favorite topic, and just sort of getting their head around protein requirements and how to do that. Can you talk a little bit more about, we're saying that muscle is this really crucial organ for like metabolism, right? Yes. For everything.
Right.
I've heard this like throughout life that like the more muscle you have, the more calories you're going to burn at rest, and the more sort of just efficiently your body kind of works in that way in terms of burning muscle and just being an efficient fat burner. Yeah. But how much of a difference does that make? Because I've also heard on the other end that it's like, dude, if you have 5 pounds of extra muscle, you're burning like 2 more calories. That doesn't matter. So talk to me about that.
Right. So it actually makes the difference for everything. It not only is your anchor as it relates to body composition And when we think about your anchor for body composition, what does that even mean? It means it's largely responsible for your resting metabolic rate, which is, Ashleigh pointed out, it's the energy that you burn at rest, just like lounging with your baby or hanging out. It's how much you can actually eat at rest.
Yeah.
Like keto chocolates and whatever. It is not that I know that Ashleigh likes that stuff. Remind me at the end to tell you what you brought me for when I was breastfeeding and just had the baby. Anyway,
it was chocolate.
Yeah, which we still get now because Shane got a taste. Anyway, so body composition, resting metabolic rate. It also is really your regulator for how much glucose, how much carbohydrates that you can manage on any given time. Right. It is one of the largest sites for fatty acid oxidation. And really, as women are aging, as our hormonal milieu changes, as our estrogen decreases, one of the things that happens that we see a lot is that triglycerides go up. There's, you see an increase in cholesterol, and muscle is one of the largest sites for fatty acid oxidation. So just in and of itself, when we think about body composition, you think about resting metabolic rate, you think about glucose disposal, you think about fatty acid oxidation, and really importantly now, it is your amino acid reservoir. So if any one of you were to get sick, muscle is what's going to save you. That is where you're going to pull from your energy. We've all seen individuals, and especially now with COVID, those individuals that go in the hospital with low muscle mass are at a much higher mortality rate to the inability to survive.
And also conversely to higher fat mass as well, right? Like that, even that sort of balance of being under muscled and over fat is going to be a problem. Yeah.
Yes. So that is, she's a good listener. All of that is
I listen to everything you say, Gabrielle. Okay. But going back to, because
I paid her $5, I slipped her $5. I was like, here's your Venmo for your $5. Just
yeah. I want to keep tying things back into things that I'm hearing women comment on and talk about in the Facebook group, because I think it'll just make it, like, just tying it in directly makes it really helpful. And one of the things that I think I've heard some women say when they're talking about trying to balance the idea of carbs and how many carbs and when and whatever. And they're saying, like, I've got this husband and he can eat like all the carbs in the world. And look, there's a lot of other factors there. Men and women physiologically are different, but there's also probably something to be said for the fact that, again, men as a baseline have so much more muscle than we do that they can get away with more carbs, generally speaking, than we can, right?
Yeah. So you think about muscle mass, which is one part, and then you think about their hormonal status. So they have higher amounts of testosterone, and that in and of itself, having a higher amount of testosterone is by nature anabolic. So their capacity and their metabolism, their utilization for growth is much higher. And women, as we age, become more carbohydrate sensitive. And there are estrogen receptors in the muscle. It's not just testosterone. And as these things changes, and thyroid, when your thyroid decreases, your ability to utilize substrate and fuel like glucose for the muscle changes. So that's kind of a real sciencey way of saying your carbohydrate tolerance, the amount of carbohydrates that you can eat at one time, go down. And that's where you got to really think about a meal threshold amount. Mm-hmm. Before anything else, is a meal threshold amount of carbohydrates.
So many things to look forward to for women as they get older, right? It's like the hormonal stuff, you can eat less carbs. Okay, let's talk about this then, because this is a question that a lot of people are having, how to put together meals in terms of getting enough protein, not overdoing it on the carbs, not overdoing it on the fat, because those are easy to do for women who are smaller and we're not trying to gain weight. Talk a little bit about this sort of like threshold per meal for carbs.
Yeah. So even to take a step back, while carbohydrates and proteins both have 4 calories per gram, so for every 1 gram, it's 4 calories. And that's theoretically true. Metabolically, they're different.
Right.
What does that mean? That means that it's very difficult to become overweight eating protein. It takes a lot of energy. There's a thermo effect of feeding, which is it takes quite a bit of energy to even metabolize that protein. So while something could have 180 grams of protein or 180 calories of protein and 180 calories of carbohydrates, the way in which your body utilizes that is totally different. Mm-hmm. So protein is your number 1 macronutrient, and it is for a series of reasons. Number 1, especially as it relates to now, protein is essential in maintaining muscle mass, which is number 2. as we are home and doing a lot of, hedonic eating, which is not eating for hunger, but eating out of emotion, protein, there's many studies, especially out of Heather Leidy's lab, that it improves satiation. So it affects the neurotransmitters as well as the hormones to drive to fuel. So you actually, if your plate is anchored in protein, number one, you protect your muscle. And number two, you protect your mind from overfeeding.
It's so good.
So those are, so what does that mean per meal? That means a minimum, well, number one, it's really hard to overeat protein. You could have 60 grams of protein, no problem. But really you're looking at between 30 and 50 would be optimal. 30 to 50 grams of protein would be optimal.
Okay, so I want to go back to this because I am very much resonating with everything you're saying. And some of the things that you're talking about are literally my success factors for in terms of body composition and just a healthy relationship with eating. Because as we know, I've got a sweet tooth. I like to eat junk food and I comfort myself with food like everybody else in the world. Nobody should feel bad about doing that because no one in the world has not done that. But one of the things that I've been saying in the group and I've been hammering at home is protein first at every meal. Protein first, because I've tried keto and people talk about how satisfying keto is. I can overeat macadamia nuts until I'm dead.
Everybody.
Right? But
I actually don't believe that a ketogenic diet for women is the way to go. I mean, I've been in practice. I've been seeing patients for over a decade. And I am telling you, for all the patients, when it comes to weight loss, the proclivity and the gravity, people talk about keto. And I have found that works better for men. But it's very few women that I have found do well over the long term on a ketogenic diet.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into that. But going back to the protein thing, and one of the big conversations we're having is this concept of, as you said, hedonic eating. So this eating out of boredom, eating out of comfort, eating just because it's there. And it's fun. And it tastes delicious and it's great. There's a lot of reasons why people do it. But I have found, and I talk about sort of doing these carnivore resets, and I know that's something you play with as well. And I, again, don't advocate for people to eat only ground beef forever for the rest of their lives, but doing that reset with protein, because as you've said, and it's been clinically proven by people smarter than myself, that protein is, it takes a lot more work to digest. And it's also incredibly satisfying in a way that your hunger systems, even if they tend to be a little bit out of whack, are going to tell you very strongly that you've eaten enough food in a way that fat doesn't, in a way that carbs certainly do not. So if you focus on making protein, and it doesn't have to be ground beef, it's whatever protein is delicious and good for you.
If you live in our house,
if it's me, it's beef liver, so you don't have to live in our houses. But the idea of eating protein first, and then people talking about they want their sweet after dinner, or they like to have this little snack.
Right.
The concept of eating this very satisfying, satiating, protein forward meal first, eat that, chew it, think about it, enjoy it, sit with it for a minute. And then after that, if you're still really craving some carbs or some sugar, then maybe you want to consider it and maybe you want to honor that. But the chances of that happening go way down when you've eaten a satisfying meal that's high in protein. So, okay, so now going back to, you were saying sort of the 30 to 50 grams of protein.
And listen, you can go over that, but this is enough. So we're talking about body composition, and we know that a minimum of 30 grams. So one of the things, if we just really think about why we're eating, are you eating for hunger? And if you're eating for hunger, you can just eat a little bit and be okay. Or are you eating to optimize your metabolism? Those are the two questions that you should think before you put food in your mouth. Am I eating for hunger, which could just be a little bit, or am I eating for metabolism?
Yeah. Okay.
That's where the number comes from, because on the lower end, you're just eating to satisfy hunger. And on a higher end, you are looking for maintaining your muscle tissue and also maintaining, if your calories don't come from protein, they got to come from somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. I remember posting something on Instagram, I think you would agree with, that it was sort of a joke, but not really. It's are you hungry enough to eat a steak? If not, you are probably not hungry. And that's the concept of everybody can eat some chips. You can always eat chocolate, but are you hungry enough to eat protein? Because we know our body, even if our minds don't know it, our bodies know that it takes a lot of work, and there's a pretty high demand to eat that protein. There's a high reward as well. But I want to go back to those numbers again, because I know that there are some people who are listening who are thinking 50 grams of protein in a meal, there's no effing way I'm going to be able to pull that off.
That's 7 ounces. And, Ashleigh is doing the intermittent fasting. I know because I've seen her. She's doing the time restricted feeding. Having a bigger bolus of protein at that one time works great.
Okay. So I think there is going to be a little bit of a mental shift for some women, and I'm not necessarily even speaking to the women listening, although I'm sure there are some who are maybe more used to, and especially if they're coming from a keto world, because I think a lot of these women they're more used to fat centric with almost some protein like on the side or on top of their salad or whatever. And like for you and I to sit in front of a massive plate of steak is pretty normal, but for a lot of women it isn't. And so what are some things that we can do? What are some things we can tell ourselves, some practices we can do to start to just get over this concept that like a healthy portion of protein is like, that's heavy, that's going to make us fat, that's going to sit in our stomach, that's going to be uncomfortable. How do we start to like get over that a little bit?
Well, first of all, if you waited until you were ready for anything, you would never do anything. Right? Honey.
Are you getting another call?
No, I need him to get the battery for my computer. Honey, I'm going to have to figure it out. I'm on a live webinar. You got it.
Get on this. Plug in the laptop.
You're just going to have to find it, whether it's over there or in the bedroom.
Okay, while this is happening, we're getting a lot of comments from women who are like, I can totally eat steak and I can definitely eat a lot of meat, and that's great. I applaud you. Good. If you want to eat more, than 50 grams of protein, then also do that. Just chew your food. Don't inhale it. And if you're still going 12 ounces in, congratulations. I'm proud of you.
The mindset has to shift, and you can't wait till you're going to be ready. So I am telling you, as an expert, this is the right thing to do. Just execute it. Trust me. Put the onus on me for 1 month. Just put it on me for 1 month and let me manage that. Just execute it. Because if you wait till you're ready or you do something slowly, you're never going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it is also, again, sort of like the tough love thing that you cannot. Maybe you're scared of eating a lot of protein, or maybe you feel like fatty.
Why we'd have to address
because maybe they've been told it by stupid people on social media. Okay, but the answer is this is the classic, concept of like, it's insane to keep trying the same shit and expecting a different response. So if you're scared of eating protein, but you're not happy with your healthier body composition, try something a little different that maybe is scary to you, because the only way you're going to change is by changing your behavior, right? So
absolutely.
What you're saying, it's like, it's a little bit of tough love. It's like, oh, you're a little bit unsure about it. We'll do it anyway and give it a shot.
And you have nothing to lose.
Right.
And it's really about being commitment. So when I think about common pitfalls when it comes to health and wellness, it's the transition phase is the number one common pitfall, right? Oh, it's been 2 days. I don't really feel good. I don't feel any different. I mean, you have to buy in to the transition period. It's longer than it's longer than a week. So it doesn't mean you give up. You just keep going forward.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a question that I want us to address. Heidi is asking about the concept of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And let's say she hasn't specified if she's either like trying to lose fat, gain muscle, maintain, whatever. But let's assume that we want to either we can speak to maintaining or gaining lean muscle mass. Is that an approach that you want to start with, or do you start? Okay.
So across the board, my baseline recommendation is 1 gram per pound body weight. Exactly that. Where the nuances come from is depending on how heavy you are, and if you're in calorie restriction, there are a couple nuances, but I will say that 1 gram per pound body weight is fantastic for everybody who's listening.
What about the idea? So you're saying like, obviously there's going to be some concessions if say you're significantly overweight at this point.
Right. So for 250 pounds, then you target it off of ideal body weight. But if you are doing, say, a protein sparing fast where you are doing a reset and you're just eating protein and your caloric intake is lower, your protein needs to be higher to protect the muscle tissue.
What about the idea of, for someone who's a healthy weight, who maybe isn't actively trying to gain muscle, especially during quarantine, we're really trying to maintain or improve our body composition. What about the idea, I think you kind of just touched on this, but the 1 pound per perhaps like lean body fat, or body weight. So
lean ideal body weight would be great. Really the key is then making sure that you're hitting at least 30 grams per meal. So you're hitting 50 grams or so per meal, I think would be a good strategy.
Okay. Yeah, because I think about times where, like, for example, if I'm 130 pounds, but I've got like maybe 105, 107 pounds of lean mass, and I'm trying to drop a couple of those extra fat pounds that I don't really need, right. I'm not necessarily going to eat every day 130 grams of protein. I might be closer to like 110, 115, because that's certainly enough to kind of keep, right. I'm not going to be like losing muscle, but I'm also, I have to at some point be cognizant of the calories that are coming in and stuff too. So I guess long story short, you'd say great starting point for most.
Yeah, you always have to be aware of the calories that are coming in, no matter what. And again, it's very hard to overeat protein. One of the things with carbohydrates is carbohydrates also has a threshold. So, you want to max your carbohydrates should probably be around 30 to 40 grams if you're eating it, no more than that. And we don't have to talk about it in detail unless there's questions. You guys can DM me, but as it relates to insulin. So keeping your insulin low, keeping the phase 2 insulin release low, you want to keep carbohydrates 30 grams or less.
And that's 30, 40 grams per day, you're saying, not per meal?
Per meal. No. Okay. Eating carbohydrates, you have to think about carbohydrates as a meal threshold. Again, so this is really shifting everyone's thinking. We often think about food in a 24-hour period. And listen, for every 100 grams of protein you eat, you are going to be able to generate 60 grams of carbohydrates. So we don't have an essential need for carbohydrates. And in fact, I am a largely carnivore in style of my eating, right? So Ashleigh and I are probably incredibly similar. We might have a little bit of keto chocolate, or we might have a little bit of greens, but not much. Mm-hmm. The majority of the food is protein. Mm-hmm. You can generate all the carbohydrates that you need from protein. But if you are just going to eat carbohydrates and your body then becomes reliant on your exogenous carbohydrate, which is whatever the carbohydrate you eat, that needs to be thought of as a meal threshold.
Got it.
And whether it's vegetables or not, it really shouldn't, the sweet spot for weight loss is probably around 30 grams.
Okay, that's very helpful. Can you talk about, for anyone who doesn't understand this concept, how you can actually end up getting glucose, getting carbs from your protein intake?
Yeah. So protein goes through a process called gluconeogenesis. And that is, again, the creation of new glucose. And it's just by its metabolism. So what happens when you eat a higher protein diet, your body becomes reliant on its own ability to generate glucose. I'm going to say that again. When you have an optimal protein diet, your body becomes accustomed to generating its own glucose, as opposed to being reliant on a meal-to-meal glucose need. That's incredible. What does that mean for you? It means that your blood sugar remains stable because you are not reliant on carbohydrates or fruits or grains or carbohydrates in your diet to maintain your blood sugar. Mm-hmm. And that is really profound and important to understand.
Yes, that is very important for people to understand. That's something I was a little bit talking about in the group too. The idea that when you're constantly putting in carbs, that's what your body's going to use, but it doesn't have to. And the whole idea of losing fat is your body being able to use the fat that it already has, because everybody has enough fat to use on a daily basis, like even the fit ones, more than enough fat to use. And it also goes back to this concept that Rachel, my co-host with this series, and I are talking about all the time that's so important, is this concept of metabolic flexibility. So whether you're keto, whether you like to do carnivore, whether you just do a bodybuilding diet that's like relatively moderate in carbs, it's the idea that you don't need this constant influx of energy because your body knows how to use its own energy. So what do you think are like for people listening who would like to maintain a healthy, whole foods, but relatively like moderate macro kind of diet? Like they want to have their avocado and they like their steak, but like they're going to eat some potatoes, they're going to eat fruit, they're going to, whatever. What's your kind of advice for how they can maintain this sort of like sustainable moderation while not still getting on this hamster wheel of like being, needing carbs basically?
First meal of the day is most important. Now, notice I didn't say breakfast and I didn't say it has to be at 8 a.m, but your first meal of the day is your most important. And that meal should be largely protein and fat. as you get up, moving around, you are moving your muscle tissue. Then if you want to have more carbohydrates, having a 1-to-1 ratio can be a benefit, or having that higher protein, lower carbohydrates within around 30 grams of carbohydrates per meal or less is how you would do it. So you would essentially backload your carbohydrates. Again, if you are training, carbohydrates before, there's many different schools of thought, so it really depends on your training status. If you train fasted or post-workout is a great time to have maybe your largest carbohydrate load, because the nutrients in the tissues are depleted. So that is definitely one strategy.
Okay.
So again, first meal of the day is most important. Keep that lower in carbohydrates. Later on in the day, make sure you are always having protein with every meal, and then you can add in a little bit of carbohydrates, and then post-training. That you do that, and that would be. I want to hear all your success stories.
Oh, there's going to be so many because these women are on the ball. Okay, so here's kind of a big question. I'm going to start to go through it, but I think there's like a bigger question coming out of it that we can address. So she's keto, following 70-25-5 fat protein carb ratio. Okay, interested in upping her protein. So I think what she's asking is, should she just go straight into significantly upping the protein, or should she sort of like work her way gradually? Building more and maintaining my muscle.
Okay. This is a good question. So the people who have to transition slowly with protein are those individuals who are mostly vegan and vegetarian, because there's a period of time where you have to upregulate enzymes. But because your diet has already been 25% protein, your ability to transition should already be there, essentially. That being said, of course, you can do it within a 2-week period where you begin to transition, perhaps a little slower. You don't jump right into a carnivore diet, but calories matter. No matter what anyone says, the core fundamentals are definitely based on calories. And whether it changes your ability to metabolize fat, or it changes your ability, the metabolic flexibility, calories do matter. So my suggestion to you would be, you can begin to reduce it, but you should be hitting your target by 2 weeks.
Okay.
If you reduce your fat, you should be hitting your target by 2 weeks. And that's a pretty high fat diet.
Yeah. I think one of the things too that I'm seeing in the comments and that I want to address is, for people, a lot of the women that are on this group are, if like looking at the grand subsection of the world.
You guys are all studs.
I was sorted out, right?
When Ashleigh asked me.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, these women, and like, they're smart and they're interested in this stuff. And so they're already many steps ahead of like the average population, which, to be fair, you're not really dealing with too many average people anyway. So you are good at this sort of like fine tuning next step sort of things. But I think one of the things that I want women to take away from this entire challenge, but the approach to food, because again, it's like a universal dilemma that we eat when we're emotional, we eat when we're bored, we eat when things rock our world and we don't know what's going on. And we're always trying to be perfect, and we're always trying to get rid of the stuff that isn't working. So we want to cut out snacking, or we want to cut out eating too many carbs at breakfast, or we want to cut. That's how women approach these things. And I think one of the things that we really need to remember, whether you're eating too much or whether you're an addict of some sort, you can't just cut something out of your life and not replace it with something positive and think that it's going to be fine. So if you want to go from like a moderate approach to like eating keto, or if you want to go from eating breakfast every day to never eating breakfast, and then you just like cut something cold turkey out of your life, and you're like, I'm going to be fine. Like, that's not usually how it works, right? So we want to replace habits that aren't serving us with habits that are serving us, right? So I think that that's a really important thing for people to remember, is that if you want to suddenly cut all of the carbs or most of the carbs from your diet, you need to replace it with maybe a little bit more quality protein, or you need to replace it with bigger meals rather than many frequent meals that have carb snacks in between. So I just want people, it's like a little aside, but I just want people to remember, like, women have this attitude of we constantly have to be restricting. And I think you and I are very good examples of people like, I'm not feeling hungry too often. I'm not feeling like I'm not eating what I want to eat, or like I'm settling for things. It's just about adjusting, Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's also knowing what your weaknesses are. If you cannot plan for where you fail, you have to know where your Achilles heel is. The more you can exploit your weaknesses, the more you will have the ability to execute, stick to the plan, and charge forward. So, people always focus on your strengths, but if you're my patient, I don't care where you're strong. I do not care. I want to know where you are the weakest so that we can fix it. You should all know exactly where your weaknesses are so that you can plan and prepare for those and then execute on those.
Yeah. Okay. I've got another question here. And it's about keto versus carnivore, but I think we should maybe even just bring it a little bit more broadly. The question is carnivore or keto better for losing fat around the midsection? But maybe let's just talk about losing fat around the midsection in general terms too.
Right. So the first thing as it relates to weight loss is calorie control, and then the quality of your body composition. And the quality of your body composition, there's tons of research and tons of data. Having optimal protein really, and a low carbohydrate diet while calories are controlled is really exceptional. So one diet better than the other? When they're both calorie controlled, I would say no. But when you think about the other metabolic benefits of protein, I would say that is much, that's much better.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In my opinion. And you don't have to say it doesn't have to be carnivore. Carnivore doesn't have to be all meat. And I like to think of it as a more optimal protein diet.
Yeah. Isn't it also, obviously there's variance with individuals where they hold their body fat, right? Like generally, men are going to carry a lot of that sort of visceral fat around their guts, and we're going to get more kind of hips and butt and stuff like that. But is it also accurate to say that it tends to be extra calories, but also extra carbs sometimes too, that exacerbates this kind of midline area? Like that's one of the easiest things to kind of cut down if you want to cut down on that midline fat?
Yes. So when you really unpack that and you break that down, belly fat, fat is fat, but why, and this is from clinical experience. One thing that happens is women go through menopause and have hormonal changes. One of the first places that they begin to put on weight is around their midsection. And is it extra carbohydrates? It can be. It can be extra calories. It can be extra alcohol. But you also have this hormonal shift. And oftentimes thyroid decreases, estrogen decreases, and body fat increases. And as it relates to the midsection, that's very common. Mm-hmm. There's other things too, like cortisol, right?
Yes.
You go through a period of stress and maybe you're not sleeping well and having night sweats, or you're up all night because your husband snores. Shane. Kidding.
Have you figured that out yet? That's going to be we've got a baby and a snorer in the house.
Earplugs and a sleep apparatus. You know how all the operators.
Of course.
So that belly fat, and that is from clinical experience. And then one of the other things is that the younger women get fat on their triceps and hips, and I often see that when women start birth control. And again, this is just clinical, observation from over a decade of seeing patients, that this is one of the things that I see.
Okay, so going back to one of the thoughts that we didn't kind of fully finish, and we do have some women here who are kind of talking about the changes that are happening hormonally as we're getting older and how that affects the way we eat. And one of the things that you talked about, I want to see if I can bring this question up again. Julie's talking about it. So you were saying how we kind of have this lower threshold for carbs as we get older. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit for women who are trying to figure that out?
So, when you're young and, you're in high school, you can do whatever you want. You can have the Twinkie diet and you're still shredded and you don't even think twice about it. But as you age, you become much less driven by hormones. And if you are driven by insulin, it doesn't make you taller, it makes you wider. So the concept of a carbohydrate threshold is there is this obligatory use in the body. And ultimately you have to maintain blood sugar, your red blood cells need some, your brain needs some, your liver needs some, all these other organs need some. So you get an obligatory carbohydrate use. And what that means is that your body is requiring glucose. It doesn't mean you have to eat it. When you think about the meal threshold, you also have to think about insulin secretion. You really want to keep insulin as low as possible, because then you'll get a rebound hypoglycemic effect, which then you'll eat more food, right? And, glucose in and of itself is toxic. It's cytotoxic and will dominate metabolism. So you will go through a period where you are increasing insulin and increasing fat storage.
Okay.
So the threshold should be 30 to 40 grams max based on obligatory carbohydrate use. And I actually have a great post on that in my Instagram it talks about where the rate of appearance and the disappearance and where all the carbohydrates go. So the 30 to 40 grams per meal, anything above that, you then are more at risk to increase, more insulin and then begin to store body fat.
Okay. And of course, we talk about if you're a 24-year-old athlete and you're doing hour-long crazy workouts and, and there's going to be bio-individuality, people can handle more or less. But I think that the other concept for people to consider, instead of even like 30 grams is a great guideline, but to consider the idea, as you've been talking about, that you don't have to never eat carbs again, but you also don't have to eat carbs again. So you kind of look at it both ways, right? Like you get to this metabolically flexible place. If you get to this place where you're eating this high quality protein and your body can now synthesize that and use it in the way that it's meant to be used, you can play with a little bit of carbs here and there and you can have them and you don't have to demonize them, but you also don't need them. And getting out of that cycle is what I think is really important.
I couldn't agree more. And these are really important points. And listen, if you guys can really synthesize and integrate what we're talking about, it will change your relationship with food. And that's ultimately what we all want, is we want you to have freedom. And these are strategic, implementable items for freedom, physical freedom.
Yep. Okay, I've got another question for you while you're taking notes. This is a question about calculating calorie and macros for body recomposition. Should I be eating at maintenance and then what I burn from training is my calorie deficit? So I think she's wondering, if you want to improve your body comp, do you go first to a dietary deficit, or do you kind of start at maintenance and try to make the deficit through exercise?
I think figuring out what you actually need. So there is variability. I mean, we do have formulas, but either doing an in-body or getting an apparatus where you actually have a sense of what you're burning. And I'm working with a company, hopefully I'll be working with a company that I'll be able to offer that. So you guys have to know. The best way to kind of also get a gauge is to track what you're eating for 2 weeks. See what your average caloric intake is. I found it helpful both ways. So what I found is that when you implement formulas, that it's very cookie cutter, and that there is an ebb and flow because there is genetic variability, period. So that all being said, is track your calories for 2 weeks of what you would normally eat, see what your average is, and then begin to reduce it. I would start with between 250 to 500 calories a day. Really see, you don't want to, this is a funny time. So you don't really want to be stressing I don't know. I feel a little bit torn. If you have external stress right now, don't create internal stress. So kind of figure out and gauge really where you are and where your capacity is to execute so that you're setting yourself up for success and not failure.
Yeah. And I mean, this goes back to the goals too. Like we're talking about goals on this page, and it's great for everybody to have, I want to lose weight, or I want to get stronger during this time, or I want to do whatever. But we also have to be realistic about this time where maybe the best goal is to stress less about the food that you're eating, to stress less about getting in your 2-hour workout that you normally get. And I think I was saying, for most people, some people are already super sorted out and aware of their bodies and their needs. But for most people, if you wanted to focus on just eating unprocessed whole foods and don't go overboard with the weighing and measuring and the tracking, if you've got way too much food on your plate, like if you just think about eating the real good nourishing food, the need to track everything and measure everything is going to go down. And that's not to say that you can't do some tweaks and if you're get really super jacked or whatever. But I think for most people, it's like, what goal actually makes the most sense for you right now? And then you figure out the plan afterwards. And going back to this specific question too, and you and I both have like competitive fitness backgrounds, so we know all about this like macro calorie counting and working out to burn all the extra calories. I think like you probably want to, mostly, unless you have a background of like seriously dysfunctional attitudes towards eating, I would think that you'd probably want to focus a little bit more on tightening the quality and the amounts of your food before using exercise to get you into a deficit, just because, first of all, it's way harder than you think to lose weight on exercise alone, right? You got to do 10 hours a day. And also, you don't want to use exercise as this punishing thing to burn your calories. Like, it's great to know that exercise burns calories. It's great to know that your HIIT workouts are helping you burn fat, but you don't want to have to like approach every day with like, I got to get those steps in if I want to lose the extra 200 calories today that's going to help me lose weight, right? So, and especially during the stressful time, and especially during this time when it's extra hard to get that extra movement in. So I'm not saying don't try to move a lot. I think you should, but to make that be like the focal of like how you're going to lose the weight, I think is probably not the best approach, right?
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And don't be confused. So pick a strategy and execute on it.
Okay. We've got another protein question for the muscle-centric doctor here. Does the amount of times per day we get the 30 to 50 grams of protein bolus matter for optimizing health?
Yeah, okay. So it really depends on your goals, but you should, it depends on your overall protein need. You should be hitting you should want to hit at least 2 meals. 2 meals a day of 50 grams. And, like Ashleigh was saying, depending on your weight, that would put you at 100. You could even go over 50 grams. You will utilize all the protein. It will max out. Muscle protein synthesis maxes out at around 50, but you utilize all of it.
Okay.
2 meals is a great place to start. If you're looking to build muscle, you would spread it out and keep those meals between 30 and 50. But you'd have to reduce carbohydrates, somewhere along those lines, and fats.
Okay.
For 2 meals, start with 2. If you'd like to do intermittent fasting, calorie control matters. 2, you can go to 3. And then beyond that is really as it relates to increasing muscle mass.
How do you feel about, for people who are trying to fluff up their protein intake because they maybe have a hard time doing the 50 grams or whatever, do you feel good about like decent quality, like whey protein or protein for shakes, like all that, like those things are good? Okay.
So whey really whey is one of the best sources of all those amino acids, and it allows you to actually cut your caloric load. So 20 grams of whey would equal the same amount as 30 grams of protein because of the amino acid profile. So if you don't want to eat that much, that's a strategy a lot of bodybuilders and athletes use. And, CEOs and people that are really working to maintain their energy and minimize body fat, that's a strategy. So whey protein is great. If you're going to use a vegan type protein, make sure that it's augmented with branched chain amino acids, which a lot of them are. I work with a company called First Form, and we use their vegan pro protein, which has a branched chain amino acids in it.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. I also think another good point here, and I'm sure this is something that you'd back me up on, in terms of getting enough protein, is a lot of the struggles people are having right now is snacking, right? Like snacking subconsciously or just because you're bored or whatever. And I do find that for some reason, snacks lend themselves to being carbs all the time. If you're having trouble with your body composition, if you're having trouble with cravings, if you're having trouble with getting enough protein, guess what's a really good way to sneak in a couple extra grams of protein here and there? If you're going to snack on protein.
Right. Or just don't snack and put together a program that you eat your meal at 11, then you eat another meal at 3, and then you eat another meal at 7. And those are your eating windows. And become very structured and very disciplined, and you would be amazed. Because then you start to build integrity within yourself because you're now executing off of what you believe to be valuable.
Yeah.
So that integrity building is really valuable.
That is very smart. But yes, also if you're going to snack, eat meat, like eat some, I don't know, like cottage cheese, have a protein shake.
I'll send you some food.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
Some food.
All right. We're getting some very good questions here again. Okay. I
won't do your laundry in case someone's asking. I can't even get my own shit done.
Other people, somebody else has to do your laundry. Okay. Here's a good question. Let's talk about protein and kidney damage. People are scared of this.
Right. So that's not true. And there's been a few recent meta-analysis. And for those of you who don't know what a meta-analysis is, it's taking high quality studies. Typically they're high quality studies. And this meta-analysis was done from Stu Phillips, who is one of the world leading protein researchers. He's actually Canadian at McMaster University. And they compile a whole bunch of research, and then they look at the overall picture, right? So it compares everything, and they do a meta-analysis. And what it actually is been determined is that protein improves glomerular filtration rate. So actually protein improves kidney function. That is a whole, myth about kidney damage and protein. It's not true.
Where did that come from in the first place?
Because nutrition is political. Nutrition and protein is political. Protein is largely a commodity meaning beef, egg, it's a commodity. Dairy, and so they actually are handcuffed and chained to what they can say. Whereas you have processed oatmeal and processed foods that can say whatever they want because they're under the umbrella of the Federal Trade Commission. Really, everything that we know about nutrition is largely myths, truly myths, and they've been perpetuated. This narrative has been perpetuated. So there is never in the history of ever have they shown that healthy kidneys, eating protein causes kidney damage. What does cause kidney damage is excess carbohydrates, because carbs and glucose are cytotoxic. And this is the uphill battle that we're fighting, and it is really a policy issue.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. So, yeah, this will be a second conversation where we talk about the politics and conspiracies of people trying to get us to stop eating high quality meat. I can't even go down there right now. I honestly can't. I haven't had enough coffee this morning to go down there, but we will at some point, maybe in the future. But what do you think, because you mentioned it, what do you think of, because someone asked this in terms of like keto and protein and health, what do you think about dairy?
I think if you can tolerate it, it's great.
Yeah.
I have found that it is inflammatory for a lot of people, but if you can tolerate it, there's no issue with it. Inherently, there's no issue.
Yeah, you just need to know. That's another thing that we talk about a lot, is that like there is no cookie cutter diet, and there is no, even someone as smart as Gabrielle isn't going to be able to tell over this call what exactly you should eat and when and how much, because there's a certain element of us individually having to take the responsibility to figure it out for ourselves. You'll know if you can't tolerate it.
True.
Yeah.
I've had all patients that I've ever seen, I've really had maybe 2 or 3 who were vegan. And I mean, I've had many vegan and vegetarians throughout the years of my practice, but just as an offshoot, it's so interesting. I have about 3 people in my practice that thrive being vegan. And I think it's because of their gut microbiome. It has a capacity to extract amino acids in a way that we can't. It's just really interesting. Is it the majority? No, it's the minority. So don't do it.
Unless you're one of those. Yeah, I mean, that's the crazy thing about human beings, right? Like there's professional athletes who can thrive on the candy diet too. Doesn't mean you should be doing it. Like, the human body is incredible. Okay, let's talk about collagen peptides, because you and I obviously huge fans, but it's not the same as a total protein or a whey protein. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I think that collagen peptides are incredible. And, we both use the company Bubs, the best of the best. And collagen proteins, what I've seen clinically, this is really interesting. So they are lacking the branched chain amino acids, in large parts. So they're considered an incomplete protein. You wouldn't utilize, I don't even count collagen towards my total protein intake. Where it's helpful, and this is just anecdotally, I have seen it in skin, hair, nails, gut health. And I actually don't believe that it's based on the amino acid profile, like it's high in proline, hydroxyproline, glycine, which can help with sleep. I believe that it probably stimulates something downstream that has beneficial effects, and we just don't know because they just haven't done research on it yet. But so, to answer the question, collagen peptides, they're great. I do not include them as a form of protein unless the way around that is to add in branched chains. Okay. So you can add in a scoop of branched chains, and now you've got your complete protein.
So it's really more of a amino acid, but health supplement, really, than like this is counting towards my protein intake. Okay. So let's talk about, for people who are on board and willing to give this solid protein forward diet a try, but may have trouble or think they may have trouble with the digestion part of it, especially for women who grew up eating, like one boiled egg as their protein kind of thing. And now we're saying, eat a big old steak. Right. Do you see people having digestive issues, and how do we work around that?
Yes, I do actually. So there's something really interesting that happens. And I often hear that people feel really heavy when they eat protein. And that's largely because you do need hydrochloric acid, and you do need a robust gastric response to be able to digest protein, which typically diminishes as you age. How do you circumvent that? Well, super simple. You can add in digestive enzymes with HCl, and that should immediately eradicate that experience.
Okay, cool. All right, just following up again here, someone was asking about the brand. So I actually mentioned this on the Facebook train, but I know that we're talking so much and there's so many posts. What I'm gonna do on the Facebook page is in our files folder on the left side where we're posting all kinds of Word documents and resources, I'm gonna post a resource of all of the companies that we are working with, talking about, endorsing, mentioning, and I'll put Bubs over there. The company is called Bubs Naturals. So you go to bubsnaturals.com. They have really, really high quality grass-fed collagen protein, and they have MCT, but it's just an amazing company. They put 10% of their sales to a charity, which is unheard of. And they're just amazing folks, and we love them, and their products are amazing. So,
and Bubs is named after a really good a friend of Shane. So they all shared a mutual friend who's a former SEAL who passed away, and that was Glenn Doherty. So.
Yeah, they're an amazing company. And I actually wrote an article about them. I can post that in our stories. You can see
cool.
it. Fantastic company. And we'll put that so you guys can see it and have access to it if you want to check them out. I know we're getting a little bit close to time here. We could keep you on here all day talking, but we'll ask a couple more questions.
I'm happy to come back. I'm so happy that Ashleigh asked me whatever I can do to help support you guys. It means the world to me. You know, the better that you do, especially during these times, the better we all do, because you are the leaders in your family.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate it so much. And we'll make sure too, that when we get off this call in the thread, I'll put your website, your Instagram, anybody that's not following you, obviously go do that. And then you can reach out to Gabrielle. Yeah. Like if you want to talk to her. And
I have a newsletter and some of these studies that I'm talking about. And I'd love to come back.
Yeah, and you're always doing all kinds of stuff. You've always got like webinars and events, and you're taking clients, and there's all kinds of opportunities to connect with you deeper. So we'll make sure that people can do that if they want to.
I need an assistant. Anyone who's looking for work.
You're looking for an assistant? Jeez.
Throw that out there.
Good luck is hard to find, my friend. Okay, here's another question, another big question that we can get into. Speaking about the kidney damage fallacy, what about the meat and cholesterol issue?
So cholesterol is typically not from the diet, right? Your body has an inherent way in which it generates cholesterol, and that's largely been disproven. So there's nothing that relates protein intake and cholesterol. That's just not even accurate, and it's not believed in science at all. When you think about increasing cholesterol, you really think about increasing carbohydrates and how it's repackaged in the liver. And that's one of the markers I always look at is what is someone's triglycerides, and it's typically related to their carbohydrate intake. And you have to understand the majority of cholesterol is not driven by the diet. So,
and isn't it also true that I think we've been taught to think that the word cholesterol is inherently a bad word, when cholesterol is actually a very necessary component of our body. Like our brains are like mostly cholesterol, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need cholesterol. It's just about how it's produced, how we get it, where we get it from.
Hormones.
Right.
You know, the lower your, which is why when people went on cholesterol medications, their testosterone went down, their hormones went down.
Right. Okay. I just got a really smart comment here from someone who said that you have the cutest baby ever, and that is actually a fact. Aries is the cutest baby.
Ashleigh.
She also loves liver, so we are actually kindred spirits. God, I love that baby. I can't really. Yeah, come over, Aries. Let's everybody see Aries.
Say hi to Auntie.
Someone heard I'm cute. Woke up.
Come and say hi to Auntie. Where's the bow?
So cute, guys. I can't wait until we can all be in person and like I can squish her again. And I miss this little baby.
Anyway.
Okay, she'll maybe come. Okay.
Maybe she'll make an appearance.
All right, we've got another question here. Baby. Hi, Aries. Were you just having some snacks?
Wait.
Glasses.
Wait, ready?
See, Gabrielle's a working from home mom as well. Dealing with so much crap. Aries isn't feeling it. No, she's not feeling the glasses. That's fine. You got some good fashion though, as always.
Chunky monkey. All right.
The sweetest.
Whoa.
Sweet. Okay, I love you, Aries. I miss you. Oh, perfect.
You didn't burp her. Come back and take her. Gosh, she's vomited everywhere.
Right on cue. Did she have too much steak today for lunch? You're still cute, Aries. You're still cute.
See ya. Bye.
Everybody here that's watching with a child is like, yes, that's a classic thing. Okay.
You
All right.
just rub it in my arms, my face. It's a little bit throw up, no problem.
Yeah. All right. We have another serious question, and then we might start to wrap this up.
Okay.
No, that's just love. Where did the question go? Hold on. Oh, yeah, this is good. Okay. Blood work. Talk to us.
My patients are like, yo, Dr. G, if you stick me one more time, I would say I get more than routine blood work. I typically have my patients lay down and give it. No, I'm just kidding. But you cannot adjust what you don't track. You have to know the numbers. You cannot be, whoa, this side, daddy. So as it relates to intuition, that is not how you treat a patient. That's not how you should navigate and negotiate your blood work. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? Every 3 months, you should be on top of it. That may be a little aggressive, maybe 6 months, but really, if you're making any kind of changes, track it.
Yeah.
And do I do home kits? It depends on what home kit you're talking about. So typically I will do certain types of toxicology kits or hormonal kits that are urine. So those are home kits. But as it relates to blood, there are a couple of finger stick dried blood stuff, but we're just starting to use it because of the current environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but you would say, generally speaking, I think it's smart I still have this Dutch test that I haven't taken and sent to you, by the way. We need to talk about that.
Ashley is my patient. And, I know that I can spill the beans on that because she spilled the beans on that.
Yep. We did blood test and we had a great chat about some things that are to improve. And I did. I still have to do this hormonal one though, because this is like a legit thing. We'll talk about it offline, but I got to send that to you. But anyway, you're saying that obviously, especially anytime there's a change or anytime you're looking to enact a change, it makes absolute sense to do some baseline testing. So would you generally recommend, if you can, to get with your doctor and do the blood testing over ordering stuff online?
Yeah. Absolutely. One of the things is you have to know that the testing is validated. I know that there's Inside Tracker and there's other ways to get blood, and I think they're contracted with labs, and that's totally a viable option. Just keep in mind that you can be reliant on the individual who's processing it. Right. And there is error. They make mistakes all the time. So yeah, it's just something to think. I really feel like you should work with an expert.
Yeah.
And as it relates to blood work, an expert would be considered a physician. And there's a lot of variability, and we have more access than ever before to people and to different specialists and things like that. And I think everybody has a very important role, whether it's a nutritionist or a health coach or a physician. And I think when you are really vetting your sources, that's important as it relates to blood work.
Okay. One more question, and then we're going to wrap this up with some summaries. We've got someone talking about hair loss, and I feel like there's not a lot of detail here. So there could be obviously a lot of things going on there, but would this be generally, I suppose it could be nutritional deficiency, but also some hormonal stuff going on?
Yeah. The top things for hair loss, number one is thyroid. And that is either low or too high. There are thyroid receptors in the hair follicles, which is so interesting. And that's what it also makes them acutely sensitive to stress and cortisol. When it comes to nutritional aspects of hair, ferritin is huge, making sure that those ferritin levels are optimized. And when you look at the lab work, there's a huge range of what is considered normal. And for hair growth and maintenance, I personally like to see ferritin at 100 to 130. Anything other than that, you can see hair loss. And then, of course, zinc and your nutrients. Liver is great, is super robust, iron, and other nutrient deficiencies.
Although,
so
this might be another case where maybe some blood tests and working with your doctor, because this could also be a number of things.
And also hair goes in cycles. So there's something called telangic effluvium, which goes in 3-month cycles. So all of a sudden you'll see, hair loss, like it's happening to me right now. And don't be afraid, and then it goes away. Mm-hmm. Ashleigh has enough hair for all of us, so maybe she'll donate some.
Yeah, maybe when I get back to going outside and getting my hair done, you might see something very different in a couple of months. But okay,
because hair loss can be really scary. And then there's topical preparations like Rogaine for women, or topical melatonin, or all that kind of stuff. Moosey, are you ready to come over and say bye?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not done yet, but.
So I know we're getting more questions even coming in, but
Yeah,
just really quickly, we've got one about peptides. So someone's talking about ipamorelin and some other one, CJC 1295. What do you?
CJC and ipamorelin are fantastic peptides for women who are looking to lose fat. They're not super great in building muscle, but they are definitely great for losing fat. So you have a growth hormone receptor. It's like a growth hormone receptor analog, and they're great. It's great.
Is
CJC
this something that you take after you have sorted out your nutrition and lifestyle? Like, this is like a tweak. This isn't like, I want to do this instead of eating properly, right?
Right. I mean, so you're looking at something that's going to help with the secretion of growth hormone and then help with the receptor aspect of growth hormone. Is it, it really depends on how aggressive, it's not just a magic shot.
Yeah.
You have to do all the things. And, in my practice, I'm very aggressive because I believe that, the average number of physicians my patients have seen before they get to me is about 13. Right. So by the time they've seen 13 physicians, I'm like, let's go. You've tried this, this, and this. Your core fundamental is nutrition. The second aspect is nutrition, nutritional deficiencies. After that, you're definitely looking at hormonal regulation, thyroid, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Mm-hmm. Then you're looking at peptides. And I typically will start some kind of medication or peptide right off the bat because it doesn't have to be a growth hormone secretagogue, but as it relates to metformin, there's all this hype out there, and that's what's so confusing. You can use a low-dose metformin, cleanly compounded metformin with alpha-lipoic acid and chromium at 250 milligrams twice a day, and you will begin to see changes that improve insulin sensitivity.
Okay.
And then, there's all kinds of peptides, but yes, anyway.
We could definitely go down a third rabbit hole talking about peptides. Gabrielle, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for taking this time. You have so much going on, and you know how much you help people, and this like specific group who are so enthusiastic and so just ready to absorb information. I think that this has been like really, really helpful. I know I learned something every time I talk to you. So, thank you. You're the best. I love you.
You're the best. I love you. And we'll FaceTime you later. We're on staycation. We're pretending we're on vacation. So
yeah, because it's Easter holiday. Yeah. Okay. We'll staycation later. So I'm just going to remind everybody, just tell people where to follow you, and then I'll put it in the thing too if they want to follow up and talk to you or ask questions. But just where do people go to check you out?
You guys can find me on my Instagram at Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, Lyon. It's on the bottom there. And I'm pretty active there. I've slowed down a bit because I haven't, just this last couple of weeks, because I haven't really wanted to contribute to the noise. I want everyone to, I think people are taking a break off social media, so I haven't been as active. But usually I'm posting 2 to 3 times a week. They can go to my website, and you guys can sign up for my newsletter. Ashley has a great newsletter too. I always read your newsletter, Ashley, by the way. And I bring up scientific studies, or, I try to make it very palatable, or interesting things that I'm thinking about, or interesting information, or case studies, or things that would really help you guys, or what I'm reading, things of that nature. And I have a free Lion protocol on my website. And actually, I have a Lion protocol 2.0, which actually I want to send you. Ashley, take a look at that. And Facebook and Twitter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Don't I have the best doctor, you guys? So lucky. All right. Okay, my friend. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you so much for this.
Bye, everyone. I really, really hope you.
Thank you, everybody who listened. And yeah, go say hi to Gabrielle on Instagram and sign up for a newsletter, and let's keep crushing it. Okay.
All right. Out.
All right, everybody. That's it. That's all she wrote for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here and listening. As always, your support means so much. Thank you, of course, to my sponsor, Bubs Naturals. Those guys are the best. Go to bubsnaturals.com. Use the code MM20, Muscle Maven 20, MM20, to get their grass-fed collagen MCT powder. I use it every day, and that's partly why my skin and nails and hair and digestion are relatively, knock on wood here, on point, despite the fact that life is not normal, stress is incredibly high, and I've managed to avoid having any kind of digestive skin outbreak, nightmare responses to stress. I think partly because I'm taking care of myself. I'm keeping all of this stuff consistent, trying to eat as well as I can, trying to sleep and hydrate as well as I can, but doing stuff like taking care of my collagen requirements, I think helps. So bubsnaturals.com. Thank you guys. You're such fantastic supporters of my work. Code MM20 to get yourself some. Join me here again next Tuesday for another amazing episode. And in the meantime, if you want to reach out, talk to me on social media at The Muscle Maven. You can send me an email. You can sign up for my newsletter on my website. I'm also posting recipes from my cookbook and all kinds of fun stuff on the website. So check back there frequently. And that's it. Say hi. Send me some suggestions if you want. I'm always here. I'm always willing to engage and talk and chat and learn with you. So do that. And I'll see you here next Tuesday. Thanks for listening, everybody.